Regional trade agreements in the WTO regime. Introduction. Regional trade agreements, RTAs, in the World Trade Organization, WTO, regime are reciprocal trade agreements between two or more WTO members. RTAs started proliferating in the 1990s, and so far about 511 notifications of RTAs have been received by the WTO as of January 2012. About 319 of them are believed to be in force. Major regional trade agreements. Popular RTAs are the European Communities, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, the Free Trade Area, AFTA, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, the Common Market of the South, Mercosur, the Common Market of the Caribbean, CARICOM, and the Australia-New Zealand Closer Economic Relations Agreement. Needless to say, a sizable part of the world trade occurs under RTAs. The characteristics of a regional trade agreement. The regional trade agreement's main feature is that its members treat each other more favorably than other trading partners outside the RTA. The general criticism against RTAs is that they are discriminatory and not consistent with the most favored treatment obligation, which is one of the basic principles of WTO law through the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT. The General Agreement on Trade and Services permits RTAs under certain conditions for establishing customs unions or free trade areas under the Article 24(4) of the GATT 1994. WTO law allows economic integration and trade liberalization to be restricted among some of its members, since it is quite possible to have a certain degree of liberalized trade at the regional level, which is not possible at the global level. Further, liberalization will be faster if tried within the regional boundaries. This was a significant level of economic growth within the region can be achieved, and this will in turn lead to more trade with other parts of the world. However, trade creation effects are smaller than the trade diversion effects, as trade between the participants replaces trade between participants and non-participants. However, whether RTAs create trade or divert trade is still not clear. Sutherland's report also reflects the same view. Guida Jonquière said in 2006 about the dangers of the proliferation of RTAs as a potential source of erosion of rules and disciplines underpinning the WTO in the long run. The WTO's dispute settlement mechanism, which has been the bedrock of its authority, will be weakened as the political commitments of its members are also weakened. Economic reasons aside, the countries may pursue economic integration with other countries for political reasons. The European Union is an example to show that it was created mainly to avert a war among its members which weighed more than economic reasons. Similarly, the establishment of Mercosur, a customs union among Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, was to promote democracy therein. Closer regional cooperation enables them to participate in the WTO with more vigor. A study on the effect of the COMESA and Southern African Development Community's membership of Zambia and Mauritius in the WTO showed that rather than any direct benefit of RTAs among them, they had spillover effects on the WTO. Although the WTO should not hinder such processes, there must be a balance between the interests of RTA countries and the countries outside the RTAs. Article 24's preamble states that the purpose of regional trade agreements should be to facilitate trade between the constituent territories and not to raise trade barriers to the other members with such territories in their formation or enlargement. The parties to them should to the greatest possible extent avoid creating adverse effects on other members. It is argued that RTAs, though can stimulate trade among its members, they can have adverse effects on non-members and even on members and on the political economy of trade policy formation. The main concerns are, 1. Trade diversion from most efficient global members to regional members. Thus, the formation of trading blocs results in welfare reduction even for the RTA member states. 2. Regionalism might result in bad equilibrium by preventing unilateral and multilateral tariff reduction. And 3. RTAs have the potential to create new trade barriers to non-regional members. For example, the rules of origin prevalent in RTA countries prevent the import of goods into a high-tariff country via a low-tariff member. However, the founders of GATT believe that regionalism and multilateralism are complementary to each other. It could also result in members opting out of multilateral agreements if barred from RTAs. It has been observed that most of the so-called RTAs are shallow integration agreements characterized by preferential trade agreements in free trade areas. More than 50% of global trade is carried out through RTAs. The surge towards RTAs is attributed to the lopsided nature of the current multilateral trade system and countries' dissatisfaction over that system. Yet another view is the early adoption of regionalism by big economic powers during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Dissatisfaction with the multilateral trading regime has been the main reason for the preference towards regionalism, which is the easier alternative to the rigidity in the multilateral trade negotiations. Modern trade barriers prove to be a hindrance to negotiating at the multilateral level. Most of the members find it hassle-free to deal on a bilateral basis at the regional level. The United States has since turned towards regionalism from its support for multilateralism. The US and EU are increasingly entering into bilateral agreements with developing countries for free trade. A developing country finds it very attractive to enter into free trade with a developed country. Conclusion. The above review shows bilateral or regional trade agreements are a viable alternative to the multilateral trading system, often faced with endless negotiations to arrive at a consensus. RTAs, on the other hand, make negotiations hassle-free since the neighboring countries share common concerns and are able to shed inhibitions due to cultural and other economic reasons. The WTO must seize the opportunity and encourage RTAs even more, since history has proved that the multilateral trading system is faced with the problem of lack of consensus, and what can be achieved through a multilateral system can be achieved through the RTAs as well.